There are moments in the tapestry of history when a trap is not a cage, but a crucible. Moments when being surrounded, outnumbered, and outgunned does not spell the end, but rather the beginning of a legend. This is the story of such a moment, a story of how a ring of steel became a forge, and how, in the heart of the coldest winter, the fire of human resolve burned its brightest. Our story begins in the winter of 1944, in the dense, snow-choked forest of the Ardennes. The air was so cold, it felt like shattered glass in your lungs. The trees stood like silent, white-robed ghosts, and the world was muffled by a thick blanket of snow under an iron-gray sky. It was here that the German war machine launched its last, desperate gambler, massive offensive that sliced through the Allied lines, creating a bulge that gave the battle its name. And at the very heart of this maelstrom, at a critical crossroads town called Rochefort, my division found itself completely and utterly surrounded. We were an island of defiance in a raging sea of enemy armor. Our commander was Brigadier General Marcus Thorne, a man whose quiet demeanor concealed a will of unyielding granite. The situation, by any conventional measure, was hopeless. We were cut off, short on ammunition, food, and medical supplies. The winter was relentless, and the enemy was everywhere. Their tank treads, churning the snow into a muddy, frozen slurry on every road leading out of town. The psychological weight of encirclement is immense. It is a feeling of being consumed, of the world shrinking until all that is left is the enemy and the inevitable end. But in the freezing, candlelit cellar that served as his command post, General Thorne and his officers saw something else. They looked at the maps, not with fear, but with a cold, calculating clarity. The German commanders had made a catastrophic error in judgment. In their haste to reach the Meuse River, they saw Rochefort as an obstacle to be eliminated. They should have bypassed us, contained us with a smaller force, and kept their elite panzer divisions moving. Instead, they chose to stop and lay siege. They chose to commit their most valuable assets to crushing our small island of resistance. And, in that decision, they sealed their own fate. General Thorne gathered his staff and explained the brutal, beautiful logic of their predicament. "They think they have us in a trap," he said, his voice steady and calm amidst the distant thunder of artillery. "They are wrong. We are not trapped in here with them. They are trapped out there with us." He pointed to the map, tracing the ring of enemy forces. Every road, every path they need for their grand offensive runs through this town. We are not the prey cornered in a dead end. We are the anvil upon which the German hammer will break itself. And that night, the narrative shifted. We were not victims. We were a fortress of the mind as much as of mud and steel. We were a bone in the throat of the German advance, and we were determined to make them choke on it. This newfound resolve was soon put to the ultimate test. A German delegation, bearing a white flag of truce, approached our lines. They brought a formal, typed demand for our surrender. The terms were simple: capitulate honorably or face total annihilation by the overwhelming artillery and armed forces arrayed against us. The ultimatum was delivered to General Thorne in his cellar headquarters. The air grew thick with tension. His officers watched him as he read the paper, his expression unreadable. He could have written a long, defiant reply. He could have made a grand speech. Instead, he turned to his operations officer and gave a response so short, so dismissive, and so utterly American in its confidence that it became a rallying cry for every freezing soldier in every foxhole. He dictated a single, typed sentence to be delivered back to the German commander. The discussion is closed. When news of that reply spread through the ranks, it was like a shot of adrenaline. It was a statement of pure, unadulterated defiance. It told us that our leaders had no intention of quitting, and so neither did we. We would hold this ground, or we would die on it. The choice was that simple. The days that followed were a frozen hell. constant shelling, the probing attacks by infantry, the gnawing hunger, and above all, the biting, unescapable cold. The gray sky was our enemy, a suffocating lid that kept our Air Force grounded. We rationed ammunition until every bullet was counted, every shell treasured. We held the perimeter, fighting from frozen foxholes, our breath misting in the frigid air as we faced down tanks with bazookas and courage. Morale is a fragile thing, but ours was forged in the crucible of desperation and held together by the sheer stubbornness of our commander's will. And then, on the morning of December 23rd, a miracle happened. A small patch of blue appeared in the oppressive gray sky, then another and another. The fog began to lift, and the sun, a pale, watery disk, broke through for the first time in over a week. A new sound filled the air, not the guttural roar of German tanks, but the deep, resonant cry of enemy aircraft. We looked up, and the sky was filled with them. C-47 transport planes, lumbering angels of mercy, flying low and steady, ignoring the flak that blossomed around them. Then, the parachutes opened the sky full of colorful blossoms, each one carrying a canister of everything we needed: ammunition, food, blood, plasma, medicine. A collective roar of pure, unadulterated joy erupted from every soldier in Rochefort. We were not alone. We had not been forgotten. Hope, delivered from the heavens, was the most powerful weapon we received that day. Close behind the transports came the fighters, the P-47 Sky Reapers, who immediately began to wreak havoc on the German positions, turning the snowy fields around us into a killing zone of fire and steel. The Germans, knowing their time was running out, grew desperate. They decided to throw everything they had at us in one final, massive assault. They chose Christmas Day to do it. Perhaps they thought the symbolism would break our spirit. They were wrong. As the sun rose on Christmas morning, the bombardment began, the most intense we had yet faced. Then came the tanks, waves of them, supported by infantry in white camouflage, advancing like ghosts against the snow. But we were ready. We were rearmed, resupplied, and re-inspired. Our artillery, now with plenty of shells, answered their barrage with a fury of its own. Our bazooka teams, emboldened, hunted the panzers in the narrow streets of the town. Every building became a bastion, every window a sniper's nest. We fought them house to house, street to street. That Christmas was not one of carols and peace, but of gunpowder and grim determination. By nightfall, the fields around Rochefort were littered with the burning hulks of German tanks and the bodies of their elite soldiers. They had thrown their best at us, and we had thrown it back. The attack was broken. The end of the siege came the very next day. On December 26th, we heard a new sound of battle, this time from the south. It was the unmistakable thunder of American tanks fighting their way towards us. It was the lead elements of the 7th Armored Vanguard, the Iron Griffins, who had been battling nonstop for days to break the encirclement. By late afternoon, their tanks crashed through the last German lines and rolled into Rochefort. The siege was broken. The relief was a wave of emotion so powerful it brought hardened veterans to their knees. We were saved. But the story of Rochefort is more than the story of a successful defense. It's the story of a pivotal strategic victory that echoed across the entire Western Front. By forcing the Germans to stop and fight, by holding that crucial crossroads, we had done more than just survive. We had completely derailed the timetable of their entire Ardennes offensive. Those elite panzer divisions, the very spearhead of the German attack, were not racing to the Meuse River. They were shattered and burning in the snow around our town. We had bled Germany's last armored reserves dry. The Battle of the Bulge would rage for another month, but its back was broken here in the frozen streets of Rochefort. In the end, what seemed like a catastrophic disadvantage being surrounded was turned into our greatest strength. It focused the enemy's power on a single point, a point we refused to yield. It demonstrates a profound truth about life, and about any great struggle we may face. Sometimes, the obstacles that seem designed to trap you are, in fact, the very things that will allow you to achieve your greatest victory. It is not the absence of adversity that defines us, but how we choose to face it. We can see the closing circle as a cage, or we can see it as an anvil, ready for the hammer's strike. The men at Rochefort chose to be the anvil, and upon them, an empire's last hope was smashed into ruin, paving the way for a victory that would change the world.